A massive great white shark rams the hull of a small Navy boat, nearly tipping it over as the crew fights to keep their balance. Panic sets in as the shark charges repeatedly, each impact more powerful than the last, the boat taking on water with every brutal hit. Desperate for survival, they fire an emergency flare, praying it's enough to escape the jaws of this relentless predator. In this video, we dive into 6 terrifying shark attack stories where ordinary moments turn into nightmares. Watch until the end if you dare. The U.S. Navy crew was accustomed to danger, but what they faced on September 15, 2005, off the coast of San Diego, California, was unlike anything they'd ever encountered. That morning, a small reconnaissance vessel operated by 4 Navy crew members was on a standard training exercise. The day's task was to test new sonar equipment near the rich marine environment where California's coast meets the open ocean. Known for sightings of sea lions, dolphins, and occasionally great white sharks, these waters required respect. But most locals knew shark attacks were rare. The team of 4 had worked together for years. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reed, the lead on this exercise, was a seasoned Navy operator who had seen plenty of unusual encounters at sea. Beside him were Petty Officer First Class Travis Holt, a steady and reliable presence who had completed countless exercises, and Petty Officer Second Class Joe Ramirez, whose experience on the water was invaluable in tight situations. Rounding out the team was Specialist Luke Harris, a bright young recruit with boundless enthusiasm, eager to learn from his more seasoned teammates. This was supposed to be another day on the water, running tests and conducting standard reconnaissance tasks. By mid-morning, the crew's sonar tests were going smoothly. They were stationed several miles off the coast, the boat's motor idling as they monitored the equipment for signals from the seabed. Reed leaned over, adjusting one of the controls, while Luke sat nearby, adjusting a line of data logs. Joe was seated on the far end of the boat, gazing out into the vast ocean, when his eye caught something unusual. A large shadow in the water, gliding silently beneath the surface. He straightened, gesturing to the others. They all turned to see the shadow moving toward them, slow but purposeful. It wasn't unusual for them to see sharks in the area, but as the creature got closer, they could make out the unmistakable outline of a great white. Its size was staggering, at least 15 feet long, and the men exchanged a few nods, admiring the massive predator as it glided near. But then, something shifted. Instead of swimming off, the great white circled back, moving closer to the boat than any of them expected. The shark's behavior wasn't normal. It circled tightly, each loop drawing nearer to their vessel. The crew tensed as the shark's body cut through the water, now alarmingly close to the hull. Its dark eyes locked on them. Reed leaned in to gauge the situation, but the shark clarified its intentions. With a sudden jolt, the shark rammed the side of the boat. The force of the hit sent everyone stumbling, gripping onto the sides to keep their balance. Luke nearly dropped his data logs as the impact reverberated through the vessel, causing a few pieces of equipment to tip over. This wasn't a typical encounter. The shark's aggressive behavior signaled it wasn't simply passing by. The crew scrambled, their minds racing as they tried to think of a solution. They knew great whites typically investigated by bumping, but this shark was far more relentless. It circled again, then with barely a pause, rammed the hull a second time harder. The crew felt the impact deep in their bones, the boat creaking as they held onto the sides. The water around them seemed to thicken with tension. Marcus immediately ordered Luke to activate the sonar signals, hoping the sound would disorient the shark and make it swim off. Luke quickly moved to the console, adjusting the sonar settings, and within seconds, the device emitted a strong pulse. The sound waves moved through the water to deter marine life from coming too close. For a moment, the shark slowed, its body hovering beneath the surface as if considering its next move. But instead of retreating, the shark turned sharply as if aggravated by the sonar. With terrifying speed, it surged forward again, hitting the hull with its powerful head. The impact tilted the boat, sending water splashing over the side, soaking the crew's legs. Joe stumbled backward, catching himself just in time. The sound waves had only seemed to irritate the shark, which was now circling them even tighter as if sizing up its prey. Realizing their methods weren't working, Travis grabbed a long pole, attempting to keep the shark at bay. But before he could position himself, the great white made another pass, ramming the boat again. The vessel groaned under the strain, and the crew realized with growing dread that they were taking on water, the boat tipping slightly with each hit. Marcus knew they had only one last option. He signaled to Joe, who rushed to grab the emergency flare gun. A last-ditch move meant signaling other boats, but in their dire situation, it was their only hope of distracting the predator. Joe took a deep breath, aimed the flare gun away from the boat, and fired several yards from the shark into the water. The flare exploded with a bright flash and a loud pop, momentarily lighting up the dark water. The shark paused, its attention diverted as it watched the strange light. It turned, circling where the flare had landed, its body moving with cautious curiosity. The crew didn't wait for a second chance. With the shark distracted, Marcus revved the engine, and they sped away from the area, the boat groaning as it fought the water leaking into its hull. They watched behind them for a few tense moments, the great white following in the distance, but then it turned, finally retreating into the depths. They kept the engine running at full speed, their hearts pounding as they put as much distance as possible between themselves and the shark's territory. Back on shore, the crew was visibly shaken as they recounted their ordeal. The boat, though damaged, had held together just enough to get them to safety, but it would need repairs before going back out. News of the encounter quickly spread among the Navy, and their story became one of the most talked about events on base. A tale of a giant predator, a relentless assault, and a narrow escape that none of them would ever forget. In its raw power and aggression, the great white left a lasting reminder of the ocean's dangers, turning a routine day into a legendary story of survival and courage. On October 11, 2000, off the coast of Galveston, Texas, Marcus Hall prepared for a routine dive to repair an underwater pipeline 80 feet below the surface. A skilled marine welder with over a decade of experience, Marcus knew the Gulf waters well. He'd faced strong currents, murky visibility, and the constant pressure of working alone in deep water. The work was grueling but suited his steady demeanor, and he found a calm in the quiet solitude of the ocean that kept him focused. The company Marcus worked for had strict safety protocols, but deep-sea welding remained risky. That morning, the crew reviewed their plans, double-checked equipment, and discussed Marcus's estimated bottom time based on the oxygen supply in his tank. Confident in his abilities, Marcus suited up, adjusted his helmet, and entered the water. He took a moment to acclimate to the pressure as he descended, watching the crew above grow smaller, and the world around him turn into the deep green shadows of the Gulf. By the time Marcus reached the pipeline, he was fully immersed in his task, carefully maneuvering his tools. The dull clang of metal against metal filled the water, his torch illuminating the work as he methodically sealed the crack. He worked efficiently, knew the rhythm of the job well, and kept his breathing steady to conserve oxygen. But halfway through the task, Marcus felt something unsettling, a shift in the water pressure around him. He looked up instinctively, peering through the limited visibility. Then he saw a large, unmistakable shadow circling just within sight. Bull sharks were common in these waters, known for their aggressive nature and unpredictability, especially if they sensed struggling or disturbance in the water. Marcus's heart quickened, and he forced himself to stay calm. Any sudden movement could attract more attention. The bull shark circled slowly, a behavior Marcus knew was not a good sign. Bull sharks often behave this way when assessing a potential threat or prey. Marcus tried to stay still, his mind racing through his options. He couldn't ascend rapidly without risking decompression sickness, and he was too far below for his crew to see any signals. His only option was to finish the repair quickly, conserving as much air as possible if he needed to ascend carefully under threat. With the shark still circling, Marcus forced himself to focus on his work, his eyes flicking up every few seconds. What was once a routine repair now felt tense, each movement weighted by the predator's presence. The metallic clang of his tools echoed sharply, louder than usual, and each tap against the pipeline made him flinch, bracing himself, half expecting it to draw the shark even closer. But the shark's curiosity only grew. It moved closer, the dark shape cutting through the water with a sudden, chilling swiftness. Now it was within 10 feet, its body shifting in the water, its gaze fixed on him. Marcus knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He was dealing with a predator who viewed him as either competition or prey. The shark lunged quickly, its powerful body veering toward him before pulling back. A test, a warning. Marcus knew bull sharks didn't make empty threats. He adjusted his grip on his torch, his hand steady despite his fear. But with limited tools and no backup, Marcus understood the desperation of his position. His oxygen levels were dropping, and he didn't have time for a prolonged standoff. The shark lunged again, this time more direct, its movements becoming increasingly agitated as if the welding torch had disturbed it. Marcus swung the torch, trying to create distance. The flame sent brief flashes through the water, but the shark responded with another rush, coming dangerously close. Marcus's hand slipped as he defended himself, and he lost grip on a piece of equipment that sank, disappearing into the depths below. The encounter took its toll. Every moment spent fending off the shark drained Marcus's oxygen and energy. He knew he needed to begin his ascent quickly, but as he moved, the shark followed, mirroring his every motion. He tried to rise slowly, managing his breath, hoping to create enough distance. Yet just as he began, the shark lunged from below, brushing his leg with its rough skin before darting away. Marcus's mind raced as he held onto the pipeline, his chest heaving, the shark now circling even tighter. He was nearing the edge of panic, his carefully rationed breaths coming quicker than he wanted. He thought about his family waiting for him back on shore, the life he wanted to return to. And his hand instinctively went to the emergency knife strapped to his leg. He knew this could be his only hope with limited visibility and time running out. The shark, sensing the increased movement, darted forward. Marcus swung the knife defensively, connecting with the shark's snout in a desperate attempt to deter it. For a brief moment, it worked. The shark recoiled, backing off a few feet, circling once again, clearly irritated. But Marcus knew he'd only bought himself seconds. With his oxygen supply critically low, Marcus realized he couldn't wait any longer. He began his ascent in short, controlled bursts, still keeping an eye on the shark. But as he rose, the shark matched his movements, staying close. Nearing the halfway point, Marcus felt a jolt as the shark made another pass, nudging him hard enough to throw him off balance. His helmet grazed the pipeline, sending a dull clang through the water, triggering the shark's instinct further. The bull shark lunged in one final desperate move, its powerful jaws locking onto Marcus's leg. Pain shot through him as he felt the teeth puncture his suit and flesh. His vision blurred, the searing pain overwhelming, and he struggled, kicking at the shark, trying to free himself. Blood clouded the water around him, and with each movement he felt his strength draining. The predator, unfazed, held its grip, pulling him further down, away from the safety of the surface. The next day, rescue divers recovered only fragments of his equipment, his knife and helmet, among the few clues left behind. The team pieced together Marcus's last moments through his damaged gear and the unmistakable signs of a brutal shark attack. News of Marcus's tragic end spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the marine welding community and igniting discussions on safety protocols for underwater work. The waters off Texas were unpredictable, and the incident became a grim reminder of the risks deep-sea divers faced, sparking calls for stricter safety measures in dangerous shark-inhabited waters. Marcus's loss weighed heavily on his colleagues and family, and his story became a cautionary tale for divers everywhere. His bravery and resilience in the face of a relentless predator left a lasting impact, prompting new protocols for deep-sea workers to protect those who ventured into the depths. This ensured that Marcus's legacy endured even in the unforgiving waters that had claimed him. Hank Gray was no stranger to the English Channel. On August 22, 1998, at age 70, he returned to Dover, England, ready to face its unforgiving waters again. This time, however, it wasn't just for the thrill. Hank, a retired lifeguard and lifelong marathon swimmer, had promised his grandchildren he would complete one final long-distance swim. He wanted to show them that age was just a number, and his resolve grew stronger with time. The early morning mist hung over the channel as Hank slipped into the water, his support boat, captained by his friend and fellow lifeguard Walter, a few meters away. The water felt colder than usual, but Hank's mind was focused, his strokes steady and practiced. For him, the swim was about more than proving his physical endurance. It was about creating a lasting memory for his family. He pictured his grandchildren, their eyes wide with pride as he completed this final stroke across the channel. An hour into the swim, the crew on his support boat monitored Hank's progress, making occasional notes. They cheered him on with quiet gestures and watched as he cut smoothly through the water, his arms a rhythmic testament to years of training. Hank's daughter Claire stood near Walter, clutching a camera, documenting each moment as her father swam. She was anxious but hopeful, knowing he had trained hard for this. Hank looked up now and then, signaling that he was doing fine, his face calm as he pushed through the waves. About 2 hours in, the water around Hank grew unusually still, and he felt a chill, a strange shift beneath him. At first, he dismissed it, focusing on his breathing and maintaining his stroke. But the sensation persisted, an eerie awareness that something was moving below. Hank kept his pace, reminding himself to stay calm, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone in the water. The shadow appeared below him, large, moving slowly yet powerfully. Hank knew immediately what it was, a mako shark, sleek and fast, a known predator in these waters. He remembered reading about mako sharks, their sharp, torpedo-like bodies designed for speed and precision. The mako was circling him now, moving closer with each pass. Hank remained steady, knowing sudden movements could trigger the shark's predatory instincts. Claire and Walter spotted the fin first, the long, dark dorsal slicing through the water near Hank. Claire's heart raced as she pointed, and Walter immediately signaled to Hank. He could see the mako was drawing nearer with each circle. Hank adjusted his pace, keeping his movements controlled, but the tension in the water grew. The support team on the boat exchanged worried glances, knowing that any sudden action could trigger the shark. Walter steered the boat closer, hoping the engine might deter the shark, but the mako seemed unbothered, its sleek form brushing even closer to Hank. Walter's voice grew more urgent, motioning for Hank to swim toward the boat, but Hank remained calm, trying to make his way forward without appearing like prey. The crew could see Hank's focused expression, his strokes slower but steady as he navigated the distance between himself and the vessel. Without warning, the shark turned sharply, diving and emerging closer, its dorsal fin cutting the water mere feet from Hank. He froze mid-stroke, and the silence in the water was deafening as he waited, hoping the predator would swim off. But the mako, now fully interested, lunged forward, striking Hank with a sudden burst of power. Its jaws clamped around his side, tearing through his wetsuit and into his flesh. The pain was instant and searing, shooting through Hank's body, but he struggled, trying to push the shark away, his arms thrashing as he fought to break free. The boat erupted in chaos. Claire screamed as Walter grabbed a pole, leaning over the edge, trying to strike the shark without hitting Hank. Blood clouded the water, and the more agitated shark released Hank only to circle back, its powerful tail thrashing the waves into a frenzy. Hank tried to stay afloat, but his strength was fading fast. He glanced at the boat, the faces of his crew a blur as he tried to keep his head above water. The shark lunged again, grabbing Hank's leg and pulling him down. He kicked desperately, his lungs burning as he struggled against the relentless force. The crew watched helplessly as the mako shark's sleek form darted through the bloody water, each attack calculated and swift. Walter reached out, trying to catch Hank's arm, but the distance between them felt impossible, the shark tugging Hank further with each movement. The support team's attempts to intervene were frantic yet futile. Walter deployed a distress signal, praying nearby boats would see it and send help. But even as they waited, they knew that time was running out. Hank's movement slowed, his arms weak from blood loss, each stroke growing fainter. The shark circled once more, its dark eye catching Hank's as it made its final approach. And within moments, Hank's body sank below the waves, slipping from view. Rescue boats arrived minutes later, alerted by the distress signal. Divers were sent down, but there was only silence beneath the water. Hank's cap and goggles floated nearby, stark reminders of the marathon swim he had undertaken for his family, for one last memory. His loss was met with shock and sadness, both in his family and in the wider swimming community. News of Hank's tragic end spread quickly, and swimmers worldwide mourned the loss of a legend, a man who had dedicated his life to the ocean and its challenges. His passing was more than a personal tragedy. It became a story that underscored the unseen dangers that lurked in open water. a reminder that even the most experienced athletes were vulnerable in the unpredictable depths. On June 12, 2002, the sun rose over a battered Maldives coastline. A powerful storm had rolled through the previous night, leaving debris along the beaches and unsettling marine life that called the area home. For Sarah Cruz, an experienced animal rescue volunteer, the day promised to be busy. Reports had been pouring in of distressed animals stranded near the shore, and she and her conservation volunteers had already started assessing the damage. Sarah, 34, was known for her commitment to animal welfare, and she approached each rescue with care and focus. That morning, she was coordinating with local marine biologists when word came of a young dolphin trapped in a fishing net off the northern reef. Dolphins often ventured close to shore after storms, confused by strong currents or attracted by the abundance of smaller fish in the shallows. Sarah knew time was critical, and without pausing for the boat, she grabbed her gear, including a dive knife, and ran toward the water. The Maldives, a series of islands surrounded by clear blue waters and coral reefs, had long been a haven for marine life, including dolphins, turtles, and sharks. The surrounding Indian Ocean was home to oceanic white-tip sharks, known for their curiosity and boldness, especially in open water. Although these sharks rarely attacked humans, their powerful bodies and sharp teeth made them formidable when provoked or drawn by distress. Sarah dove into the warm water, her arms slicing forward with urgency. Her team called out from shore, reminding her to stay safe. She waved back in acknowledgement, her mind already focused on the trapped dolphin somewhere ahead. The dolphin's thin, frantic clicks reached her ears as she approached, guiding her through the water. The animal was tangled tightly, its sleek body struggling against the constriction of the net. Sarah could see the wounds along its side where the nylon fibers had cut deep into its skin. Without hesitation, she began cutting through the net, carefully working around the dolphin's fins and flukes. It was grueling, the fibers taut and difficult to sever, but Sarah kept at it, knowing the dolphin's survival depended on it. She could feel the dolphin's tension as it twitched and bucked against her efforts, its movements a blend of fear and desperation. Finally, with one last cut, the net loosened and the dolphin broke free, swimming in a small circle as if to test its newfound freedom. But as Sarah smiled with relief, she felt a sudden shift in the water around her. A dark shadow loomed nearby, moving with a deliberate, unsettling grace. Her heart pounded as she recognized the form of an oceanic white-tip shark, its body gliding closer with curious intent. In her focus on the dolphin, Sarah hadn't realized the rescue had attracted the shark's attention. It likely sensed the splashing and the dolphin's distress, and now it was investigating, drawn by the commotion. The shark's presence unsettled her, but she knew to stay calm. Panicking would only increase her risk. She slowly began backing away, watching the shark's movements. But the shark, now more interested, started to circle, its fin cutting through the water, each pass closer than the last. Sarah's eyes locked onto the creature, hoping it would lose interest and swim away. But as she continued to back up, the shark seemed to grow bolder, its body moving more aggressively. Without warning, it lunged forward, a swift movement that left Sarah with no time to react. Its teeth grazed her leg, tearing through the fabric of her wetsuit and sending a searing pain up her side. She gasped, instinctively kicking out to fend it off, but the shark wasn't retreating. Instead, it circled again, its dark eyes fixed on her as it prepared for another approach. Her team on shore watched in mounting horror, their calls barely audible as they realized the gravity of her situation. They waved and shouted, trying to get her attention, but she was already in survival mode. Her body tensed as she clutched her knife, aware it might be her only defense. Blood from the wound clouded the water, a scent that would only provoke the shark further. The shark lunged a second time, this time aiming for her arm. Sarah swung the knife instinctively, the blade connecting with the shark's nose. The brief contact pulled it back, circling once more, but this time more cautiously. She knew the reprieve wouldn't last. The oceanic white-tip could not back down easily, especially when it sensed vulnerability. Despite the pain in her leg, Sarah knew her only chance was to keep the shark at bay long enough to get back to shore. Each stroke was agonizing, her leg throbbing with each kick. But she forced herself forward, adrenaline surging as she fought to maintain her speed. The shark moved in again, circling tightly, and Sarah turned, preparing to fend it off again. Her arms were weak and her breaths came in sharp, painful gasps. But she didn't stop. The shore seemed agonizingly far and her strength was waning. The shark circled closer, emboldened by her slow movements. It lunged again, this time biting down on her shoulder, its teeth sinking into her flesh as she struggled to push it away. Her cries were muffled, and the water grew darker around her as blood mixed with the salt water. The rescue team was powerless, their frantic signals to passing boats going unnoticed in the confusion. They watched as Sarah fought with the shark, her body twisting and jerking as she tried to free herself from its grip. Every second felt like an eternity, her strength slipping with each struggle against the predator. But then a distant motor echoed across the water. Another boat, responding to the signals, sped toward her. The shark released her momentarily, distracted by the noise, and Sarah used the opportunity to push herself forward, her movements weak but determined. The boat's crew reached her in seconds, pulling her aboard just as the shark circled back, its dark eyes watching as it lingered near the surface before disappearing into the depths. Sarah lay on the deck, her vision blurred and her body weakened by blood loss. Her team crowded around her, their faces a mixture of shock and relief as they tended to her injuries. She was rushed to shore where medics took over, their faces grim as they assessed the wounds. In the following days, Sarah's story spread through the conservation community, her bravery becoming a bittersweet tale of the risks involved in marine rescue. She had freed the dolphin, her compassion driving her to an act of courage few would undertake, yet the cost had been nearly fatal. The incident sparked heated debates among rescuers, conservationists, and marine biologists, each weighing the value of rescue work against the risks of open water. Tyler Green was a local legend in the small Hawaiian town of Hana, Maui. Known for his fearless surfing, he often rode waves that others avoided. It was a reputation he had earned through years of daring encounters with the ocean. But his love for the waves came with an inherent respect for their dangers. On May 17, 1999, an overcast day greeted the town, but Tyler barely noticed. For him, any day was good to surf, and he planned to head out to a remote break where the waves were rumored to be huge. The local fishing boats had already been out that morning, chumming the waters to draw in fish. The scent would attract all kinds of marine life, including tiger sharks, common in Hawaiian waters and known for their curious yet aggressive behavior. Tyler, focused on the ocean, was unaware of this as he strapped his leash to his ankle and paddled out alone. The waves at the secluded break were big, and Tyler felt his pulse quicken with excitement. He paddled out, his mind set on catching one of the massive waves that loomed in the distance. He sat on his board, scanning the horizon, feeling the energy of the swells beneath him. He paddled hard when he spotted the wave he wanted, pushing his board forward as it lifted and carried him. Standing up, he felt a rush as the wave rose beneath him, towering and fast. As he rode down the face of the wave, a strong surge of energy sent him flying off his board. The wipeout was rough, pulling him under and spinning him in all directions. When he surfaced, he was disoriented, the familiar sting of salt water in his eyes. But as he reached for his board, he felt something strange, a large presence moving beneath him. He froze, his senses on high alert. And then he saw it, a massive tiger shark circling him with slow, deliberate movements. Tyler knew not to panic, but he couldn't ignore the gut-wrenching fear rising inside him. The shark swam closer, its wide, dark eyes fixed on him, assessing his every move. Suddenly it rammed him, the force pushing him backward and knocking the wind out of him. His board, still floating nearby, was out of reach. Tyler knew he had to stay calm, hoping the shark would lose interest. But the shark wasn't backing down. The tiger shark circled again, its movements more aggressive, closing the gap with each pass. Tyler struggled to stay afloat, kicking gently to avoid sudden movements that might provoke it further. But before he could think of his next move, the shark lunged, its powerful jaws clamping down on his leg. Tyler tried to fight, to pull free, but the shark's grip was too strong, its sharp teeth cutting deep as it pulled him underwater. On shore, a few locals noticed his board floating back toward the beach, broken and splintered. They waited, watching the horizon for any sign of Tyler, but concern grew as the minutes stretched into an hour. Word spread quickly through the surfing community, and a search party was organized. The Coast Guard was alerted and locals took out boats hoping to find him. As night began to fall, the reality of the situation set in. Tyler was gone, and the ocean, once his playground, had become his grave. The Coast Guard called off the search late in the night, leaving his friends and family to mourn his loss, grappling with the silence left behind. Tyler's disappearance profoundly impacted Hana's surfing community in the following days. Stories of his courage and skill circulated, and local surfers gathered to honor his memory, organizing a paddle-out ceremony. His story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the hidden dangers lurking beneath the waves they all loved so deeply. On a brisk morning in early August 1997, in South Africa's renowned Shark Alley, Liam Parks prepared his dive group for an eco-tour, a much-anticipated dive to observe the marine life inhabiting the waters between Dyer Island and Geyser Rock. Shark Alley, famous for its concentration of great white sharks, was a place Liam knew well. At 32 years old, Liam was an experienced diver and a committed marine conservationist, respected by his colleagues and students for his passion and knowledge. He could sense the nervous excitement as he led his small group on board the dive boat that morning. His group consisted of 4 divers, each eager to see the abundant marine life that Shark Alley was famous for, but well aware of the risks that came with it. Liam's calm and confident demeanor put them at ease as he reviewed safety protocols, explaining the importance of staying close together and maintaining a slow, controlled descent. He assured them that while great white sharks could be curious, attacks were rare if divers acted responsibly. The group anchored near the reefs, suited up and prepared to dive. The water around them was murky, a challenge but not unusual for Shark Alley, where the current often limited visibility. Liam reminded everyone to stay close and descend slowly, watching as each diver disappeared beneath the surface, one after the other, until he followed, taking his place at the back to keep an eye on everyone. As they sank into the depths, the faint fish silhouettes appeared, darting through the gloom. The divers hovered, mesmerized by the movement of the ocean around them. Liam pointed out a school of fish weaving around the rocks, gesturing to keep the group together. But as they continued deeper, he felt a tension in the water, a slight shift as if they weren't alone. Suddenly, through the haze, a massive figure emerged. A great white shark, far larger than any Liam had encountered on past dives, approached, moving with calculated swiftness. It circled them, and while sharks often showed interest in divers, something about this one felt different. It wasn't just observing them. It was circling closer, more intently, its movements increasingly aggressive. Liam quickly signaled the group to ascend. He could see their wide eyes, the recognition of danger setting in, but they followed his cue, beginning to rise slowly, keeping their eyes on the shark. But as they ascended, the shark shifted its focus to the motion and closed in, circling tighter. Liam knew what he had to do. To keep the group safe, he needed to draw its attention away. He separated from the group slightly, moving toward the shark, making himself a clear target. The shark turned toward him immediately, its eyes fixed on his movements. The group kept rising, glancing back with fear and confusion as Liam gestured for them to keep going. The shark, however, had chosen its focus. Liam watched as the massive predator slowed, then powered forward with sudden, terrifying force. The shark lunged, its jaws wide as it made contact, pulling Liam downward. The pain was sharp and immediate as its teeth tore into his arm. He struggled, his mind racing as he tried to push it away, hoping the others were far enough to be safe. The other divers, now close to the surface, looked down in horror, witnessing their instructor's final struggle, helpless to intervene. Liam's instincts told him to fight, to buy every second he could. He kicked out with his legs, using his free arm to strike the shark's nose, but its grip was unyielding. It released him briefly before striking again, aiming for his side. His vision blurred as the water turned dark around him. He felt his strength waning, the reality of his situation settling in as he struggled, determined to keep the shark occupied until the others reached safety. At the surface, the group broke through, gasping as they scrambled toward the boat. Their shouts alerted the crew, who threw them life preservers and hauled them aboard, each diver reeling from the shock of what they had just witnessed. The captain called for emergency assistance. But they all knew that time was against them, and the likelihood of rescuing Liam grew slimmer by the second. They waited, hoping to see any sign of Liam surfacing, a hint of bubbles or movement in the water. Minutes ticked by, stretching into an agonizing silence. Finally, the rescue team arrived and began searching, divers scouring the depths for any sign of him. Hours passed, and with each passing moment, the reality of the situation became clearer. Liam was gone. When they recovered his equipment days later, his torn gear told the story of his final moments, his last selfless attempt to protect the people in his care. News of Liam's sacrifice spread quickly, resonating deeply with the global diving community. Tributes poured in, honoring a man who had given his life to save others. His story became one of respect and admiration, a cautionary tale underscoring the unpredictability of the ocean and the bravery of those who dared to explore it. In the following years, divers spoke of Liam Parks with reverence. His life became a symbol of dedication, a reminder of the inherent risks faced by those committed to understanding the ocean's mysteries. Liam's story was shared widely, inspiring many to approach the ocean with both awe and caution, and his sacrifice lived on as a poignant reminder of the delicate balance between humanity and the wild, powerful world beneath the waves.